Goblin Girl, a Humorous LitRPG by Vaughan Farrar. Chapter 1. A rumbling song of rocks fumbling to the ground hummed from deep within the crevices of Mount Sorobus, deeper into the darkness than most creatures would dare delve. A large fist of smoldering rock sprung forth from within the piles of a bouldering stone in the caverns, punching upwards, outwards, and followed by another. Together, they pulled the igneous head of a wicked titan from a rubbly tomb buried in a time long past. Molten rock poured down over the creature's head as though a volcanic fountain was perpetually erupting from atop its lumpy skull. Cracked, jagged stones formed a grotesque parody of facial features protruding out from the cascades of lava. Upon its stolid face, two slumbering embers suddenly ignited, illuminating the darkness within its sunken, pebbled eye sockets. The fervent creature then stretched its gloppy jaw with the deepest of growing yawns, shaking the very foundation of the mountain. "Just 5 more millennia," it grumbled sleepily, none the wiser of how long it had already slept. Screw it, I'm awake now. Guess I'll just get up." Quaking the earth with little movement, it rose from the tumbling stones to its 4-hoofed legs, slowly rearing its fist ready to punch into the darkness. One swift swing, and the fiery beast smashed a hole through the side of Mount Sorobus, opening a portal. Sunlight poured in, flooding the cavern and devouring the abyss. "Oh, God, my eyes!" it screamed, shielding its face with an arm. "Stupid sky fire thingy! Forgot about that." Through the hole in the side of the rocky mountain, the head of the great beast, Lavgula, crept out from the shadows to gaze upon the world that he had slumbered beneath for many thousands of years. The hill-topped valley before him was a sight of beauty and wonder, of rolling green meadows washing the lands interlaced with luscious trees dotted all around. Birds were chirping the songs of love, and butterflies were drinking the nectar from bottle-topped flowers. Babbling brooks filled with pebbles and twigs made safe homes for frogs and tadpoles, whilst shimmering fish and water birds swam in the lake beneath a gorgeous flowing waterfall. Nature was flourishing all throughout the valley, and there was a calm bellowing to the wind passing over Lavagola's molten scalp. "Ooh, gross! What is this green ick?" the beast scoffed profoundly, brushing some of the grass and moss from its hand it had picked up after touching the side of a mountain. "It actually pains me to look at this gunk," it sneered, revolted. "Yup, that settles it. This muck has to go." Bursting from the mountainside, Lavagola stepped out from its confines, sending massive chunks of rock flying every which way. One particularly large shard of debris splashed into the lake below, crushing every unfortunate fish and bird that had been enjoying the waters. It was a mercy in hindsight as Lavagola inhaled a great deep breath of fresh air that burned its throat like an overly spiced curry and holed up a large stream of liquid rock and fire. Spewing from its gravelly lips, the lava engulfed all of the greenery surrounding the beast, blanketing everything in a molten viscous goop, leaving behind only a scalding liquid mess of ash and death. Relieved after releasing such a heavy load, Lavagula gazed upon the fields where once there were majestic flora and fauna, now only a blazing wasteland remained. Rather proud of its accomplishment, the Titan's face stretched into a menacing grin before belching. "Pardon me," it excused mockingly. Wafting away the smell of its own breath with its massive hand, Lavagula further admired its handiwork. Having successfully terraformed the luscious valley of Mount Sorobus into a fiery pit of doom, the beast stepped up and over one of the hilltops to look upon the rest of its surrounding landscape through groggy eyes. The Titan gasped with a heavy heart as all of Dravalaire's realm was more or less completely covered in the very same greenery that had just been incinerated. "What in flaming inferno has happened to my precious rocks?" it roared before letting out a rumbling sigh. "This ain't the same world I grew up in." Thoroughly sorrowed from the overwhelming presence of life and nature, the Titan pinched the space between its eyes, where the bridge of its nose would have been if it had one. A painful throb of an impending headache arose beneath its flaming skull, so Lavagula decided then and there that it would restore the realm back to its former glory of nothing but fire and stone. All this horrid color is abhorrent. I just can't stand the sight of it. The sound of those annoying parasites feels as though lightning is striking within my skull. It all has to burn, the beast grumbled. It wasn't long before the birds and other animals, calling to one another with passionate love through the beautiful harmonious songs, were suddenly silenced by a rapid tsunami of boiling lava. Lavagula's destructive rampage went on for only so long before it was noticed by the people of Dravalar, especially those who had melted much like the birds before them. As word had caught wind of the Titan and its devastation, it didn't take too long for King Vinithilarius the 69th to be made aware of the situation. More precisely, his royal vizier Buffy was made aware, as she had the attention span capable of retaining such information whilst the king was having issues or rolling a set of dice. "Your Majesty, this is rather important," she tried to interject, but the king remained fixated on his toys. "Yes, but this dice, Buffy, look at it. It's extraordinary," Vinitharius cheered with childlike excitement. "It will only roll a 1 or a 2. Looking up from her scroll to see what the king was referring to, Buffy could only roll her eyes. "That's because it is a coin with the number 1 and 2 written on it, Your Majesty." And as Vinitharius flipped it with his hand, she snatched the marked gold piece right out of the air. "Hey, I was playing with that," he pouted. "Slightly more pressing matters have come to our attention, Your Majesty. There appears to be a giant molten creature terrorizing the realm. Apparently, it woke up in the Sorobus Mountains less than a day's past," she read whilst placing the coin in the pocket of her tightly fitted robes, removing it from the king's sight. Hugging her physique quite closely, the outline of the coin on her hip was prominent enough through the patterned black and purple fabrics that Vinitharius remained distracted. "So what?" he asked with an absent mind. "What proof do we have of the validity of these claims?" Walking over to one of the windows in the throne room, it took Buffy less than a second of surveying the lands to point towards the glow of flame and smoke coming from the mountains just over the horizon. "That would be your proof there." Begrudgingly, the king dragged himself off his throne, and after flopping his fluffy white fur cape over his shoulder, he sauntered to the window to take a look himself. "That light proves nothing," he glowered. Buffy then handed him an archaic brass spyglass, gesturing for the king to look through it. Pointing in towards the mountains, Vinitharius could see Lavagula's clear as day spit roasting several cows like a shish kebab over the fire the Titan had set alight with his own breath. "Ah, yes. I suppose that's probably proof enough. So, what do you propose that we do to this walking doomsday? I fear that it won't be too long before he reaches the kingdom," asked Buffy, merely as a formality at this point. She knew asking the king for any idea was an exercise in futility, but her pride in her role as the royal vizier demanded that she follow proper conventions. "Isn't that what we have those exploiting guilds for?" Vinitharius questioned, stroking the scraggly tuft of hair protruding from his chin. "You mean adventuring guilds? Well, actually, yes." She was shocked. That was the first time the king had actually returned an idea that wasn't some lame-brained plan involving something like feathers and tar. "We can send out word to the guildmasters and have them prepare their strongest members for the quest of a lifetime." "Yes, yes! And as a reward, they shall be soaked in black tar and pounded with feathers to be paraded as heroes all throughout the streets," the king happily squealed, shaking his hands with excitement. Burying her face within her palms, Buffy sternly replied, No tarring, Your Majesty. We've been over this. We will promise them wealth and knighthood. No one is going to quest to be made to look like a clucking schwicken bird and be humiliated in front of the kingdom." "I'd do it. Kids these days have it far too easy," the king groaned as he sat down at his table, grumpily shoving a silver spoon of pudding into his mouth. "Quite," Buffy sighed. "And that's why you're our king, of course. You'd sacrifice everything in all of your kingdom, even with only the reward of being tarred and feathered dangled in front of you." "Damn straight," Vinitharius replied, though it was more of an audible nightmare of squelches and sputtering as his mouth was full of pudding. I just hope there are adventurers as brave and as willing as you out there, my king. Her sarcasm was lost on the ever-nodding magnate, yet Buffy's words half rang true, in hoping for a champion or two to save the world. Perhaps the candidate worthy of the title Brave Hero could be found at the foot of the Moisty Mountains, where 3 rookie adventurers were honing their skills and farming for experience. Though admittedly cutting through, shooting down, and lobbing fireballs at lowly goblins charging at them from within a cave all day for hours on end may not portray the exact image Buffy was envisioning. "Are you serious, Mike?" questioned a tall hooded mage before summoning and tossing another fireball from betwixt his bony fingers. "I can't believe you actually willingly chose to be an Erdefell paladin." "Oh, whatever, Dixie. You're just jealous that you can't afford to be one," the stout, muscled mass of young man that was Mike scoffed back. "And, now you're stuck having to fully cover your own disgusting skeleton body so that the townsfolk don't murder you on sight." "'Tis the price of power in this world's true beauty, old boy," said Dixie, turning up his nose, or at least he would have if he had one. "Besides, it's better than having to pay 1,000 gold every time I level up just to be part of some potato cult." Gasping with mild indignance, Mike sliced another little goblin in half with his large rusted sword. "Potato cult? That's the emblem embroidered on your tunic, is it not?" Dixie chuckled, thwacking a goblin to death with his wooden staff as if it were a sporting bat. "And what'd they give you? A rusty iron helmet you can barely see out of, a potato sack for gamsome, and a 2-handed metal pole that can barely pass for a sword." "It's an apple of the earth, you uncultured swine!" Mike exclaimed, skewering yet another goblin on the end of his blade. "The Order of the Erdefell is a humble religious institute that embraces nature and worships its offerings no matter how great or small. It's all about peace and being one with the realm." He spieled right before slicing the head off another goblin that was charging at him with a rusty knife. "Peace," Dixie howled with laughter before sending a chain of lightning from his hands from one goblin to the next. "Look at you. You're a killing machine. There'd be blood everywhere if these goblins didn't fall out of existence into a cloud of dust upon death. Though I'm honestly surprised that you can kill anything with that hunk of junk." "Hunk of junk? Do you mean my sword?" asked Mike, to which Dixie nodded his hooded head. "The Erd sword just happens to be one of the greatest weapons in all of Dravelair. Thank you very much." "I've seen wooden swords with a sharper point," Dixie teased. "Yeah? Well, it'll get better soon when I level up and pay my fee." Mike's tone was slowly dropping with an abashed mood about his current gear. "And if you don't pay your fee?" Dixie asked. "I think it breaks," Mike replied, somewhat solemnly, having suddenly realized a minor epiphany. Dixie gestured suddenly with his own open skeletal hand, shaking them towards Mike as though they were presenting him with an obvious truth. The undead mage had been distracted just enough for a goblin to sneak up behind him and raise a dagger ready to stab him in his side. As a crude blade nicked the fabric of his purple swirl and diamond robes, an arrow twinged right between the goblin's eyes, causing it to puff into a little cloud of dust and drop a few gold coin pieces. "Will you two stop your pissing contest and pay attention to the little green bastards in front of ye?" yelled the short woman, wielding a twig and string bow. She then blew a few strands of auburn hair hanging from the fringe of her face and released 3 more arrows into the brows of 3 more goblins emerging from the cave. "How's the guild going to respect us if you two numbskulls get us killed by these pitiful low-level gunk goblins?" "Yes, Ada," both Dixie and Mike groaned in almost perfect unison. The awkward silence between the 3 adventurers would have been deafening if it weren't for the gnarls and croaks of the goblins they'd slayed effortlessly. That, and the odd chime of gold hitting the ground after every kill in time with the oddity that was experience point numbers fading in and out above the heads of the deceased. It made their farming feel far more satisfying. It is said that that's the worth of the creature's soul fading out of the realm and into the next, but in turn, it happens to help adventurers level themselves up. "So," Ada broke the silence, "ever wondered what it would be like to screw a goblin?" "Excuse me?" asked Dixie, thinking that he misheard. He shot her a look of quizzical disgust, as well as the skull could portray. What? They're basically human, Ada reasoned, anatomically wise anyway. We really gotta get you a boyfriend, added Mike. Oh, come on, don't tell me that you never thought about it, she said, holding firm. You're telling me that it's okay for you to want to sleep with a werewolf girl who is basically a dog, but a goblin is too far? Oh boy, Dixie gagged. I didn't think that I could still vomit without internal organs, but here we are. And the skeleton mage hurled some sort of green liquid from out of his pearly-toothed mouth down into the mud next to him. Ugh, where'd that even come from? I don't eat. Yeah, but the werewolf girl is still technically human, ain't she? Mike asked rhetorically, ignoring Dixie's ailment. I just think that if she had a wiggly tail and some cute wolf ears, that it would be just like the cutest. Even a few of the little green goblins hesitated for a moment, having heard the conversation transpiring before them. After giving one another mixed looks of confusion and slight suspicion, they continued their fruitless attacks upon the trespassing adventurers, as was their nature and right. Maybe I feel the same about little green men. You ever think about that? Asked Ada. Releasing a little more green bile at the very thought, Dixie coughed out the words, Yeah, this is a totally normal conversation. Well, what would you rather converse about, Ada snapped, seemingly a little irate after feeling ever so judged. Anything else, Dixie cried. Like, I don't know, where do you think goblins go after we kill them? Do they just poof into a gold on the floor, or is it their goblin afterlife, do you think? Not a bad question, Ada replied. She thought about it for all of 2 seconds before releasing yet another arrow that flew into the brain of a goblin girl just above her left brow. She would have charged and stabbed Ada with her little goblin sword if she hadn't been reduced to a cloud of dust and gold.